Preface. A word from the author. Congratulations, dear friend, for even picking up this book. Get ready, because your life is about to be drastically transformed. This book might become one of the major adventures of your life. Money Won't Make You Rich is one man's journey of poverty, struggles, studies, money, wealth, and wealth creation principles. This book will surely not leave you where it found you. You're about to be mightily enriched and empowered. I came from true abject poverty in Africa. I didn't even have a pair of shoes to wear until I was 12 years of age. Our family might have lived on less than $1 a day, and I never even had or saw a toy of any kind as a child. Instead, my body still carries the scars of injuries and wounds that I acquired while trying to make a living in the jungles of Africa. Miraculously, less than 40 years later, not only did I make my first million in United States dollars, but also I was amazingly able to do this without being involved in any active business. Because I am a full-time pastor and itinerary speaker, I opted for passive earning, which came by adhering to certain laws and principles of wealth creation. More incredible is the fact that I was able to make my first $1 million in a short span of only 9 months. In 2 years I was able to prove the efficiency of these wealth creation principles and reproduced more than 200 PEOPLE who now have a capital base of more than $1 million each, even though they basically had nothing when I met them. Most of them were those generally referred to as down and outers, including former drug addicts, petty traders, bandits, and worse. In the process of taking this journey of wealth creation, both for others and myself, I have come to some critical conclusions I wish to share with you in this book. 1. Becoming a millionaire is not a big deal, it is easy. 2. Everyone who sincerely wants to can become a millionaire. 3. Money won't make you rich. 4. Our world can overcome world poverty if we have the heart to do so. 5. Money is only worth making if it is going to be used as an instrument to set others free. 6. God created money for the same reason as all other things, to serve His purposes. 7. Ignorance is the biggest challenge of our age, it is our biggest killer. What does it mean to be rich? It is my hope and prayer that this book will spark a movement that will end the gruesome statistics of poverty and lack in our world today. Can you believe that 80% of people in the world today live on less than $10 a day? 3 billion people live on $2 a day, while 1 billion live on less than $1 a day. 50,000 people die daily because of poverty-related causes. Money won't make you rich, because it is not meant to do so. To be rich is to understand the meaning of money and wealth, and to know the difference between the two. Money is not necessarily wealth, so most people who desire to be rich are not necessarily looking for money. What they are actually looking for is wealth. Money only comes to people who are already rich or wealthy in spirit and soul, so it's actually not money that makes you rich. You are rich before money even comes your way. Money only responds when these elements are in place, and until such a time, money won't move in your direction. Money won't make you rich, because a man who is poor in spirit is poor altogether, even when he has a lot of money in his pocket. Money without the wealth of the soul is equal to a compilation of sorrows and regrets. Only God enriches without sorrow to it. Money doesn't come to good people because there are millions of good people who aren't rich. Money doesn't come to educated people because there are so many educated people living middle class lives in our world today. Money doesn't even come to churchgoers or Christians. If that were the case, then our churches would be filled with millionaires. As a matter of fact, money doesn't necessarily come to business people, as so many are struggling even to make ends meet. Money only comes to those who are already rich in the knoll edge of the laws of money. If you are not already rich in your mind, then money won't come to you. Until you are rich in your mind, you're not rich at all. So what is wealth? Wealth is the subtotal value of assets owned by a person. The original meaning of wealth was to possess great qualities, values, and virtues. In essence, a person wishing to be rich is actually thinking in terms of all the things he wants and needs. What then is money? Money is what economists call legal tender, and it is something that is generally accepted as a means of payment, exchange, and pricing. Money is what we use to measure wealth, because it is the easiest way to move and handle wealth. The information in money won't make you rich begins to have more meaning when you look at it from the prism of the above-mentioned definition. You can have wealth without necessarily having money because money won't make you rich. On the other hand, you can have money without being rich because you need to first be wealthy, both in assets and virtues, before you can be truly rich. Money is only a strip of processed wood or metal, so it's not worth exchanging your life for. Instead, you should seek first to build the wealth of both material and inner values, and then money will begin chasing after you. You must be rich before money comes to you. Money has two effects on people: either it rules and controls, or it is mastered and controlled by its owner. The effect it has on you is determined by whether you are first wealthy in assets and virtues. In this book I have endeavored to share truths with you that will surely enable you to become financially free if you will only abide by the laws of money that are revealed. More importantly to me, I want to not only set you free from poverty and lack, but I also want to set you on fire to become an instrument of financial freedom to all men wherever they are. Become set free from the power of money. When people of God are empowered financially, they can easily pursue their God-given ambitions, goals, and purposes. Many people have dreams and aspirations that are not fulfilled because of a lack of money. Many of God's projects suffer for the lack of money. I believe this book will help end this dilemma in the lives of many. Money Won't Make You Rich is not just a book about money, purpose, and poverty, however. This book's larger emphasis is setting people free from the power of money. Money has a way of possessing people, and only the wise can overcome its influence over the soul. Remember, either you master money or you serve it. Money is a good slave but a bad master. This book will teach you how to become a master over money. You can be truly rich by mastering and walking in the tested laws and principles of wealth creation. Read on, my friend, and join the army of those who are empowered financially to go and destroy the evil of poverty in me. Mediocrity in our world. Come, and let's make history together. Much grease to your elbow. Yours in him, Pastor Sunday Adelaja, Kiev, Ukraine. Chapter 1. The reality of poverty in our world. Consider two different snapshots. The first is of a stereotypical suburban family from Kansas City, Missouri, surrounded by all their material belongings. The family of four, two requisite children, stands in front of a luxury home, compared to world standards. Outside the home are two expensive cars and a brand new minivan. Scattered around the family home are rooms full of furniture, including an 86-inch long sofa, king-sized bed, oriental carpets, various wardrobes, several television sets, radios, telephones, computers, CDs, DVDs, iPods, several bathrooms, modern kitchen equipment, and a library of books. Altogether, the family owns hundreds of items of every conceivable nature. This depicts the life of a typical family in the United States. The second snapshot shows a statistically average poor family from a village similar to the Nigerian village of Idomala Ijebu Ode, Ogun State, where I was born and raised. All of the family's few earthly possessions are scattered in front of their thatched roof hut, where the family of 10 lives with a goat, a pig, and some chickens. There are few cooking and washing implements. The only food is cassava, a type of yam. There are sticks used for digging and a bundle of wood for firewood, but no electric utensils because there is no electricity in the village. The family owns almost no clothes besides what each family member is wearing. Their toilet is a hole in the ground outside the hut. All that they own, put together, amounts to maybe a dozen items. This depicts a family with no possessions and little opportunity. It depicts the picture of an earlier century. On a global scale, most people more closely resemble the Nigerian family than the American family. The stark reality is that unlike the typical American family, more than half the people in the world have very little to call their own. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as living on less than the equivalent of $1 per day. Moderate poverty is defined as living on less than $2 a day. By that definition, a man earning $3 per day or $90 per month is not poor. This may seem ludicrous to those living in Western countries. Nevertheless, more than 1 billion people live on less than $1 a day, and nearly 3 billion live on less than $2 per day. In other words, about half the world lives each day on less money than the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee. 1. As alarming as these facts may be, what's more alarming is that such things could be happening in this 21st century. How can a generation that lays claim to such technological breakthrough and innovation allow such disparity to continue unchecked? Unfortunately, most Americans and people in the Western world as a whole are generally oblivious to the abject poverty and utterly detestable conditions in which the rest of the world lives. Driven by need or greed. When Westerners are confronted with the blunt facts of global poverty, it becomes immediately apparent that most of the material things they pray for are more driven by greed than by need. Greed makes us want more than we can handle. It makes us heap up things until we have to acquire more living space just to keep it all. Greed is the spirit that drives corporate America. It's why corporate downsizing has become so popular while top-level executives earn ridiculously exorbitant bonuses. Greed is pervasive within the Western culture, as well as most of the leadership of the developing world, especially in Africa, and the church is not immune to its vices. We seem to have forgotten that God only promised to meet our needs, not to satiate our greed. The sad reality is that greed is vigorously promoted from the pulpit, and by those who are supposed to be the pillar of truth and justice in society. My intention here is to sound the alarm and awaken the conscience of people in order to see injustice come to an end. It is not an attempt to judge anyone, rather, it is an attempt to incite awareness in the hopes that we would work to reform our unequal world. If we have problems using this absolute definition of poverty, we can also look at poverty as a relative idea. That is, we can see poverty as something socially defined, or something that depends on a particular social context. Such a relative measurement would ask us to compare, for example, the total wealth of a segment of the poorest people in the world with the total wealth of a segment of the richest people in the world. If we do that, these comparisons will be even more bleak and unsettling. A recent study published by a senior World Bank economist showed that the richest 50 million people in Europe and North America have roughly the same income as almost 3 billion poor people collected from around the world. 2 This 1% of the world's population takes as large a piece of the pie as the small slice handed to the world's poorest 57% of people. Using another illustration, if we use the poverty line as defined by the countries of North America and Western Europe, then the poorest 10% of Americans are better off than a full 2/3 of the world's entire population. The World Bank recently reported that 24 developing countries with a population of 3 billion people are beginning to integrate into the global economy, with a per capita growth of only 1% in the 1960s up to 5% in the 1990s. 3 Even so, the state of world economics and the ratios of poverty between the Western world and the developed world are very dramatic. It is no secret that there is inequality among nations. Certain countries of the world have most of the money while others have very little. There is also inequality within nations, for it is a fact that within poor countries there are rich groups of people whose incomes compare to the incomes of wealthy groups in the more developed nations. Our sense of goodness and fairness suggests a more equitable distribution of the income of the world. Our sense of fairness and rightness says that within a country, some should not be living in mansions while others scrounge around for food in garbage dumps. It is hard to understand why distribution of wealth is so unequal. Our sense of what is just and appropriate cries out and asks why. Reasons for inequalities. Why do some countries have so much and others so little? One explanation is that this situation is a result of the market economy. Rich countries are rich because they supply things that are scarce but in high demand. Poor nations are poor because they supply too many things for which there is relatively little demand. This explanation, however, seems somewhat simplistic, and does not answer the question of poverty in poor nations such as South Africa, which supplies the world with diamonds, for in Nigeria, which is the world's 9th largest producer and supplier of oil, both commodities that are very much in demand. Whatever the answer might be, it is clear that inequalities in the world cry out for some form of remedy. As President George W. Bush said at a meeting of the Inter-American Development Bank, a world where some live in comfort and plenty, while half of the human race lives on less than $2 a day, is neither just nor stable. 1 way the world attempts to come to grips with poverty on an international scale is through the concept of foreign aid. This is where poor nations receive money to encourage their growth and economic development. Reasonably rich nations donate money to alleviate the conditions of poverty in poorer nations. This is especially true when richer countries tout their moral responsibility by pointing to the size of their foreign aid budget. Despite the fact that there seems to be no objective evidence to prove foreign aid stimulates economic development in poor countries, the rich nations continue pledging more money in aid to the world's less developed nations. The reality of poverty is that 1/3 of deaths, some 18 million people each year, 50,000 per day, are due to poverty-related causes. 7 That is 300 million people since 1990, the majority women and children, roughly equal to the population of the United States. Every year nearly 11 million children die before their 5th birthday. 8 These are horrible, sobering facts. Can the Christian Church do anything to solve the problem of worldwide poverty and the inequality of wealth distribution? Aside from foreign aid and the economic theories of supply and demand, is there a spiritual dimension to poverty? The following chapters do not discount economics, but they go beyond the economic sphere to blend the laws of economics and spirituality, and to address the individual hearts of men and women as they submit to God in their quest to overcome poverty. This book is not a study of world poverty or economics, but it does seek to answer the question, is the Christian and the Christian Church relevant to the eradication of poverty in the world today? I wish to address Christians who have access to biblical solutions to this problem, and I want to tell you my thesis right. Up front, Christians around the world must become kingdom-minded in order for us to help resolve the problem of poverty in our world today. The purpose of the church is not to have people come in and sit down. Rather, it is to go out and change cultures by establishing God's value system. Moreover, this includes God's value system regarding money and wealth. Poverty is not God's will for anyone, and it is outside kingdom purposes for Christians to be struggling in the area of finances, whether personal or societal. Being kingdom-minded is what the Apostle Paul calls being transformed by the renewing of your mind, Rom 12:2. I have written in other books about applying the principles of the kingdom to the church, and now I want to apply those same principles to individual Christians on questions of money, wealth, and personal finances. Remember, God's kingdom principles apply to money as much as they do to anything else. World poverty is agonizingly real. It will never improve until individual Christians affect the culture of life, change the culture of nations, and improve their own financial situations. Thus, the economic growth of the world must be the priority of individuals in obedience to the teaching of Scripture and the principles of the kingdom of God. Hence, the reason why a Christian desires financial freedom is not just to meet his or her needs, but also to become an answer to the challenges of our world. The Great Commission of Matthew 28:19-20 is not only about rescuing souls and planting churches. It is about much more. The Great Commission tells us to make disciples of all nations. Nations are cultures, and cultures are to be transformed and redeemed by Christ's church taking dominion over God's entire creation here on earth. The purpose of the Great Commission is to change cultures, and this means the church needs a new model or style of missions. God is not satisfied with our church-minded approach. He created everything, and He wants His principles to rule everywhere. That is our assignment in the Great Commission to permeate the world with the nature and principles of God, and to be the Lord's representative in our spheres of influence. If we are in a place, then God is there. Only the redeemed can improve our world. That is why God is calling Christians all over the world to take up the challenge of conquering the mountain of finances to subdue the earth for God. The Gospel of Prosperity. This book is not about the American dream or the well-being of any individual. It is not about getting money for personal gain, and, as will be evident, it is not about the so-called prosperity gospel. There are many wolves in sheep's clothing when it comes to teaching financial prosperity. Of course, God prospers people, and I believe this as strongly as anyone does. Nevertheless, there is a good deal of error in most American prosperity preaching, as in most countries where the prosperity gospel is preached. It is important to address this matter now, so that there will be no mistake in this book for the teachings of the so-called prosperity gospel. The main errors of the prosperity movement. The prosperity gospel teaches that one prospers only when giving. Giving is the main emphasis. This is false. True prosperity comes not just when we give, but also when we know the laws of money and discipline ourselves to abide by them. This is the difference between being rich or poor. Although there is an important place for the law of giving, it is only one of many laws. By itself, it will fail to make anyone sustainably wealthy. There is a very sympathetic story of a young couple who was sent out with their little child as missionaries by their denomination to a different part of Ukraine. Their situation was so bad that they didn't even have money for a bed or a mattress, and so they ended up sleeping on the floor. In Africa and other third world countries, this could be something quite common, but for it to happen in the center of Europe is out of the ordinary. They had been commissioned to go out and save people, meanwhile they didn't even have the bare minimum for basic living. This young couple was so desperate that they were about to leave the ministry when they came across my teachings on financial freedom. Subsequently, they started listening to these teachings and applying the principles to their lives. As a result, 3 years later, even though they are still full-time pastors, they have been able to make their first $1 million. As a matter of fact, things were so bad for them that they didn't have any starting capital. The young pastor had to borrow $150 from his father's pension for their first investment. What is most painful about this story is that the couple had been serving in their charismatic denomination for 15 years prior. They had been taught that all that is needed for financial prosperity is to be a good Christian, be active in ministry, faithful in giving tithes and offerings, and other additional giving to various church projects. They did this for 15 years faithfully, even dedicating their lives to be missionaries, yet the money never came. As they continued to abide by the teachings of the church, they likewise continued to become more and more impoverished. This is because they were not following the whole truth of kingdom prosperity, only half the truth. Half-truth, however, cannot get the job done. Half-truth is equally as dangerous as a lack of truth. One aspect of the truth will not make you financially independent. Giving only is not enough to bring you to substantial wealth. This man is now traveling all over Ukraine and Europe to teach about these real principles and how ignorance caused him to live a miserable life in poverty, and conversely, how the truth has set him free for financial abundance to minister freely. In most cases, when Christians teach that the only way to be prosperous is by giving to the church or ministry, the only person who becomes wealthy is the one on the receiving end or those who have control of the collection. Usually, this is the pastor, televangelist, or radio preacher and his or her inner circle. This leads to a situation where many pastors, especially those of most mega-churches, live in the lap of luxury and excess while large portions of their flock can barely afford 3 square meals a day. It is important that you understand I am addressing the issue of imbalance. The truth is, many megachurch pastors are quite talented and hardworking. Many have been able to create their own wealth from their book sales and other private enterprises. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with being prosperous and live well from one's own exploits. However, there is something fundamentally wrong with exploiting the weak and the innocent for personal gain. There is something wholly unsettling about a Christian leader whose taste for the good life exceeds his sense of justice. This imbalance is not in harmony with the teachings of Jesus Christ. My focus in this book is to help my readers attain financial freedom. The focus is on your well-being, not just that of some preachers. For that, I want to introduce what I believe to be a more biblical model for prosperity. Unlike the corporate model used by most churches where wealth is only accessible to a few at the top of the pyramid, this model is a kingdom model which empowers all. This model has produced more than 200 millionaires in just 2 years in the church that I currently lead. The majority of these people started with nothing. Many were in debt when they started their journey to wealth. All glory belongs to God for giving us the wisdom and insight and for vindicating His word. For the preachers of prosperity, financial prosperity is much more than a blessing, it is the right of every believer who claims it. In fact, God wills wealth and riches to all His children. The prosperity movement presents an erroneous view on the gospel of prosperity by limiting wealth creation to the power of confession. You often hear them teach that what you say is what you get, or confessing it means possessing it. Start speaking about it, and it will come into being as God creates what you are speaking. This is the Wheel of Fortune approach to faith, and it amounts to extortion because it purports to teach people how to make God work at their behest. Most teachers of prosperity teach an incomplete aspect of financial empowerment. They emphasize faith and belief and never teach about the production of goods and services, and often because they are not comfortable with having to release their controlling grip on the congregation. They never tell their people that true prosperity comes by getting involved in the process of production because they themselves do not understand it. They emphasize faith, belief, and sowing a financial seed, and never teach about the production of goods and services. Amazingly, the Donald Trumps of this world profess no faith at all, and yet they sit on top of the pile in the world of finances. It is high time we begin learning the importance of producing goods. There is something wholly unsettling about a Christian leader whose taste for the good life exceeds his sense of justice. And rendering services as a prerequisite to being wealthy. It is not enough just to bring money to the church or pastor. If we do not produce goods and services, we are deceiving ourselves if we expect to gain or sustain wealth. Because of this kind of teaching, even in rich Western societies like the United States, you often find most people living in the clutch of persistent need instead of living in the abundance they profess. This always shocks me when I travel through the United States. There is another problem with the prosperity movement. It tends to put the emphasis on the needs of the person. Unfortunately, this has produced more self-centered Christians, and what's in it for me? Christians. It talks about paying bills and meeting the needs and desires of life, such as cars and houses. I believe, however, that the main purpose of money is not to meet needs, but first to accomplish God's purposes on the earth. Of course, the Lord meets personal needs, but that is not the main reason to desire wealth. God wants us to be rich so we can carry out His purposes. He is more interested in making U.S. channels of blessing to others rather than islands of blessing to ourselves. This theme will recur throughout this book. Popular scriptures but false interpretations. The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous is a major doctrine in prosperity preaching circles. The emphasis is on the fact that God wants to take wealth from the sinner and give it to believers. Proverbs 13:22 does say, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous." This is true, and the Bible does not lie. Nevertheless, when preached this way, there is contradiction in the very principles of God's nature. The principles of the justice of God would not allow collecting the wealth of the wicked to give to the Christian, because the Bible teaches in Proverbs 10:4 that the diligent worker will prosper, no matter whether that worker is a believer or not. God makes people rich because of diligence and hard work, not because they are followers of one or the other prosperity teacher. There is yet a more tragic consequence of this direction of thinking, which is that it warps the underlying sense of love, kindness, and fairness of its subscribers. Whereas the Bible teaches us to love our enemies, This kind of teaching ends up causing us to hope and pray for the downfall or misfortune of the unbelieving wealthy, so we can dispossess them of that wealth we have been eyeing. The way to look at the meaning of Proverbs 13:22 is that we reach wealth when the righteous produce a better product than anyone else on the market. This is because the righteous will produce goods and services not only to impress people, but also to please God. The transfer of wealth that prosperity teachers should emphasize is not God taking from the wicked to give to the believer, but rather people buying from the righteous in exchange for the best quality of goods on the market. Remember, there is no transfer of wealth without Luke 16:10-12. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? Neve. The point here is that the wealth of the world comes only to the believer who produces better goods or services than others in the market. Because most people buy from him, he exchanges his goods for the wealth of the world and the wicked. The wicked desire the plunder of evil men, but the root of the righteous flourishes. Prov 12:12, Neve. In this scripture, the Bible tells us that only the wicked desires the plunder of other men, even if the man with the plunder is an evil man. It is still wickedness to desire what you did not work for. It is even more alarming that this kind of teaching is coming from a pulpit of a church, because the church is supposed to be a pillar and foundation of truth. On the other hand, the second half of this verse says, "But the root of the righteous flourishes," which goes along to tell us that if we are really righteous we will be productive and do things better than other men. That is what the word flourish indicates. We are supposed to not just be productive, but also exemplify excellence and perfection in our work. When something flourishes, everybody is attracted to it. When we flourish in what we do, in the goods we produce, in the services we offer, all other people who wish to flourish will come to us. That is what I mean when I say that the wealth of the wicked will only come to the righteous when the righteous do things better than the rest of the world, so much so that everybody is attracted to them to buy their products and deploy their services. Some prosperity preachers use another passage of the Bible to push their wares. When the children of Israel left Egypt and God told the Egyptians to give their gold and silver to the Israelites. See Exodus 12. They use this as an example of God giving the wealth of the world to the believers, and it sounds nice except that the children of Israel had worked very hard for a very long time in slavery and forced, unrewarded labor for that gold and silver. For several years, Pharaoh did not pay the Jews for their labor. They were working without compensation, so in this case, God was proving He is a God of justice. He would not allow the Israelites to leave Egypt without being compensated for their years of hard labor. Technically, this was a transfer of wealth on a very large scale, but as you can see, God did not violate His own principles of justice in order to make His children rich and happy. Israel's newfound wealth was amassed over the course of several centuries under Pharaoh's hand. They had built his temples and his cities and received nothing for their toil. The gold and silver were simply God's way of compensating the children of Israel for their services. The basic premise of this book is that prosperity must have as its top priority the advancement of God's kingdom and His righteousness. Matt 6:33. Christians can build this kingdom by understanding the concept of wealth and touching the whole fabric of society through the creation of wealth. When properly allocated, wealth can become the solution to many of society's problems. Not only can Christians experience financial freedom, but that freedom also affords them the ability to be committed to radical kingdom service. How the system works. There is a popular belief that all people are equal, and that everyone has an equal opportunity to make money. This is a COV or up. Even though God makes us equal, manufactured systems work to the advantage of some, and to the disadvantage of others. Only a select group of about 5% of the world's population has solid and correct information on how to get rich. In addition, you can be sure they have the system constructed in such a way that all things work together for their good, and that no one breaks the order. Outside this cadre of wealthy leaders active in promoting their own self-interests, the rest of the whole world suffers because people do not know the truth about the spiritual dimension of money and riches. The truth is there is more than enough money in the world, and anyone can have a share of this wealth. Because of a lack of knowledge, however, the vast majority of us do not have access to it. I consider this an unfortunate situation, and the time has come to apply the remedy of knowledge and information. Unbalanced prosperity teaching has failed to deliver on its many promises. Within the church, it has created a structure similar to that of the world where only those at the top attain wealth. That is why I so strongly resent it. Rather than reducing the scourge of poverty, it has only made it worse by failing to apply the whole counsel of God to the problem. Practical wisdom for aspiring millionaires. 1. Successful people know that success is not a gamble or a matter of chance. 2. Successful people know that all success comes by hard work. 3. Real success is a lifetime of learning. 4. Successful people have conditioned themselves to learn from others and from their failures and successes. 5. Successful people learn by practicing what they know on a daily basis. 6. Successful people know that true education is what you get for yourself and by yourself. It is not what someone gives or tells you. 7. Successful people know that true success in life does not come by luck. A lucky man is not a successful man. 8. True winners know that they must develop skills and acquire knowledge before becoming truly successful. 9. A successful man is one who has the knowledge, skills, and expertise that brought him to success. 10. Work your way to success, and don't expect it to come by accident. Kingdom Principles from Chapter 1. 1. Over 1 billion people live on less than $1 a day, and nearly 3 billion live on less than $2 per day. 9. 2. The richest 50 million people in Europe and North America have roughly the same income as almost the 3 billion poor people collected from around the world. 3. The poorest 10% of Americans are better off than a full 2/3 of the world's entire population. 4. The reality of poverty is that 1/3 of deaths, some 18 million people each year, 50,000 per day, are due to poverty-related causes. 11. 5. Christians around the world must change cultures by establishing God's value system. 6. World poverty is agonizingly real. It will never improve until individual Christians affect the culture of life, change the culture of nations, and improve their own financial situations. 7. The reason why a Christian desires financial freedom is not just to meet his or her needs, but also to answer the challenges of our world. 8. God is calling Christians all over the world to take up the challenge of conquering the mountain of finances to subdue the earth for God. 9. When Christians teach that the only way to be prosperous is by giving to the church or ministry, the only person who becomes wealthy is certainly not the giver but rather the person or group at the helm of the ministry. 10. Chapter 2. Why every Christian can be a millionaire. Many years of experience have convinced me that if money does not serve the kingdom, then it perverts, spoils, and destroys its owners. Therefore, our motives must be right when it comes to interest in gaining money and riches. If we realize we have gone off track spiritually, we need to humble ourselves before God and renew our covenant with Him. One woman in our church made a covenant to give God all her earnings, and leave only 5% for herself. God blessed her abundantly with many business deals and wealth because she put herself in a position of total reliance on God. This woman still keeps 5% and gives God 95%. These boundaries protect her from any kind of trap. She gives to God's work by using her money to minister to the needs of others in her society, not just to the church or other Christian ministries, which, by the way, she also does with joy. If our trust is only in the material things we possess, things like our houses, our cars, our summer cottages, or our insurance plans, then how pathetic and vain is our faith. This makes us the most laughable of people, and there is no reason why anyone outside the faith would want to commit to Jesus Christ. Of course, we can justify our need for many of these things in life, but the point here is that these are just things that make our life easier. Life is much more than the things we own. If we measure our lives by the things we own, we have no more hope than any other unbeliever. The Bible teaches a vital life creed: everyone who has something should behave as if he or she has nothing, as having nothing, and yet possessing all things, 2 Cor 6:10. Having material things, we need to see ourselves in the right perspective without them. If we notice ourselves thinking and daydreaming about money all the time, then we have allowed the idol called mammon into our hearts. For this we need to repent and break free from its control. The beauty of the spirit life is a real freedom, a soulish detachment from the idolatry of material things. Our over-occupation with an overwhelming pursuit of these things, to the very detriment of the kingdom, is proof enough that we are enslaved by the love of money, which is the source of all evil. We have to search our hearts and imagine ourselves without cars, without nice clothes, without beautiful homes. Would we feel miserable? Then we have failed the test. If a person depends on outward, visible things, that person is not free but enslaved. That person has the love of money, which is the source of evil. That is why Jesus told the young rich man to sell all his possessions before he could inherit the kingdom. See Matthew 19:21. The wealthy man failed the test because he loved his riches. He could not imagine himself without them. You are not free until you can imagine yourself being happy without all these material blessings. If you cannot, then you do not really own those things, they own you. We often think that people who have money are the ones with the love of money, and since we do not have much of that valuable commodity, we are free. What a deception! It is usually the other way around. Predominantly, the rich are free from the love of money, and that is why they have it. They usually do not suffer from the disease of loving money. It is those who constantly think, dream, and worry about money who are 100% addicted to it. Now, the rich are certainly not free of their own problems. The main problem the rich really have is that they often trust in their riches, making it their fortress instead of God. Hence, the rich man or woman has a harder time giving out to the poor. We are not to be servants of money, for that is not our destiny. God calls us to be masters of money. If money is our master, our lives will show its fruits: pride, self-centeredness, dishonesty, greed, envy, and phoniness. No, we are to master money, not the other way around. Money is merely a tool, a means by which we meet our needs and accomplish the purposes of God. We must learn to rule over money, because if money means more to us than just a piece of paper, we are depending on it too much one way or the other. What is money anyway? It is just processed wood or metal, just a piece of paper. Perhaps that is why the founding fathers decided to put the words "In God we trust" on the front of the US dollar, meaning, we don't trust in this piece of paper, but in God. Yet people risk their lives for this treated paper. They serve it instead of serving the Creator. We used to have a currency in Ukraine called karbovanez, which was replaced by the current grivna. Why did the karbovanez cease having value? It no longer has value because the government changed the currency. Germany used to have a currency called the mark, but now a mark is a blurry spot or streak on a piece of paper. As Christians, we must learn to see our present-day currencies the way we see past currencies, as pieces of paper that no longer have value. I am speaking of value to our souls. Our inner minds must not rely on the money we have, we only allow it to serve us and meet our outward needs and resolve issues of life with no soul attachment whatsoever. Some people think they have freedom because they have capital. However, is capitalism or any other ism the way out, or is it all an illusion? We should not be living by the laws of capitalism, but according to the laws of freedom, the laws of the kingdom, putting the values of God above all earthly things. When our earthly lives are over, we will live in eternity by the laws of the kingdom, but the condition is that we start living by these laws now. The hazard of the love of money. What causes people to deceive others and do repulsive things? The answer so often is the love of money. If we are believers, then we need to realize that nothing holds us here on earth. Life is in Christ Jesus, not money. Then why does a believer need to learn about finances? We need to learn this so we can be free from the power of the love of money over us. Only the truth makes us free. When we understand God's principles about finances, we can then sow money to please God and do His will here on earth. We want to be free of the love of money so completely that we can control any amount of it without it perverting us with its influence. We want to use it for God's purposes. There are only two options with money: either it serves you or you serve it. Knowing the truth about money and money principles frees people from bondage. This is especially important for Cappy. If money is our master, our lives will show its fruits: pride, self-centeredness, dishonesty, greed, envy, and phoniness. Tailist, free market countries, because the system of those countries makes people work hard at jobs, sometimes keeping them on a leash of ignorance. As a result, we do not know some basic things about money except how to spend it. We become slaves to our jobs in the desire to make a good living and end up serving money. The kingdom of God, however, works differently. It is the only successful alternative to the system of this world. We must master money to make it work for us while remaining free from the world system. We must work for God in order to dominate the world with the principles of the kingdom of God. Consider an interesting testimony from a woman I will call Nicole. One businessman, who was my husband's pastor, wrote a very effective syllabus consisting of 40 principles taken from King Solomon's Proverbs. King Solomon was wise, wealthy, and had a very clear head about him. As Christians, we also want to have clear heads, and we remind God about it while forgetting to use our heads. I used to be like that, but after going through this program dealing with work ethics, money, character, business, worldview, and everything having to do with everyday life, I realized I did not have the right knowledge of money and needed to study, change, and develop. When God called me to be a missionary, it never crossed my mind I would ever need to know anything about finances. I was so wrong. 90% of the people who came to me for help had financial problems, and I did not have answers for them. I could only pray for them, and I realized that as a Christian I also had a responsibility to know about finances. I needed to know more than others did, because as a missionary, I will answer before God about what I taught people. I wanted to share the knowledge I had learned in this curriculum when I first began working in Colombia 10 years ago, and now this course is taken by 118,000 members of police departments all across the country, along with 16,000 prison guards. Even prisoners showed an interest in this program. The government covers all expenses. Recently we came back from Kenya, where the mayor of a large city asked for 70 copies of this course for all his advisors. In Guatemala, 36,000 students go through this program every year. 1. From Nicole's testimony, we can see that for a Christian, there are real advantages for knowing the laws of money. In Nicole's experience, she is set free to go as a missionary, while her investments work for her and supply her needs. She does not need to worry about health or life insurance, neither does she need to go around begging for support. Mastery over money allows her to serve God while her money works for her. Thousands of people all over the world, from government leaders to average people in the market, need to learn financial principles. Even one empowered person can make such a huge difference and help to alleviate poverty and ignorance in our world. Shun fear. Do not let failure be an option. Do not be afraid of anything, including fear of failure itself. It is not failure itself but fear of failure that is the biggest obstacle on the path to success in a Christian's life. Failure makes us stronger, more flexible, and more decisive, but fear of failure paralyzes one's thoughts and actions and hinders us from doing the things required to make it on. The way to success. One young reporter asked Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, how he became successful. "Mr. Watson and Sword, would you like me to give you a formula for success? It's quite simple, really. Double your rate of failure. Success is on the other side of failure, so have courage to move forward. Millionaires who made their money by plain hard work do not have a gambling addiction, but they are always ready and willing to take a well-thought-out risk that leads straight to their set goals and the achievement of a greater reward. Psychological preparation is the key because it is the biggest indicator of our readiness to become prosperous. Every time you face a risky situation, you should ask, what is the worst that can happen if I move forward? Then, just like J. Paul Getty, the oil billionaire who made his money the hard way, make it your assignment to be sure the worst will never happen. The fact that everyone is afraid of failure is understandable and legitimate. We are all afraid of poverty and bankruptcy. We are all afraid of making a big mistake and falling behind. Very wealthy people who make their own money are usually those who intentionally and consciously resist this fear and take steps accordingly to move forward. Ralph Waldo Emerson offered powerful advice when he wrote, "Make it your habit to do things you are afraid of. If you do what you are afraid of, then your fear dies. When you are brave, this invisible power rises up inside of you, and your every act of courage leads to the increase of your courage, which makes you stronger and braver when you confront fear in the future. Every time you do not have a guarantee of success, take a step and move forward, and your fear will decrease as your courage and confidence increases. Finally, you will reach a stage in your life when you are not afraid of anything." I think the best moment from the movie Apollo 13 is when everyone thought they would lose the spaceship and Gene Kranz, the head of flight control for NASA, declared in a loud voice, "Failure is not an option. Our task is to become millionaires who make our own money to serve kingdom purposes. Our task is to devote ourselves to this one goal and work at it every day." When difficulties and fears arise, remember, failure is not an option. We need to get hold of this mentality. For more than anything else, it will be the guarantee of our financial success. Why every Christian can and should be a millionaire. When I first became a pastor, I was living in comfort but never in abundance. Then one day I came in touch with the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, and God opened my eyes. For a period of 1 year, I meditated on this scripture passage, and this led me to discover the need to do more study on the subject of wealth. Finally, I realized that everyone could become a millionaire. Before I could preach on this new revelation, however, and if anyone was going to believe me, I had to prove these principles by first becoming a millionaire myself. Moreover, I had to do this without stealing or misappropriating money from the church that I oversee. I felt for sure that the rich were rich because they understood the laws of money, something about which I had to acquire more knowledge. Therefore, I gave myself 2 years to convert theory into actual possession of $1 million. Using the principles of wealth creation and following the laws of money, I am teaching in this book. I was able to make my first $1 million in 9 short months. Today this sort of thing is a common phenomenon in our church, as over the last 2 years I have been able to raise more than 200 millionaires in the embassy of God. Prior to that, every one of those people had an income of less than $1,000 per month. Every Christian can be a millionaire, and, actually, it is easy to become one. It is just a matter of knowing the principles involved. Becoming a millionaire is not only for some special people who are born with golden spoons in their mouths. It is for people who know the true nature of the laws of money and the biblical secret of success. They have learned to maximize this knowledge in their lives. 10 reasons why every Christian can be a millionaire. 1. God said we should be the head and not the tail, which means we should be first and not last. See Deuteronomy 28:13. 2. All gold and silver belong to God. As heirs of God, we have a legal right to it, but it must be used for His glory. See Haggai 2:7-9. 3. We are God's highest creation, and we are commanded to possess and dominate the earth. Wealth plays an important role in fulfilling the command to dominate the earth. See Genesis 1:26-28. 4. Our eyes make the difference. See Proverbs 20:12-13. 5. Both the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. Prov 22:2. God is rich unto all His children, but He does not determine your financial status, your knowledge of wealth creation principles does. 6. Money is necessary to live in a material world. What oxygen is to the physical body, money is to the material world. See Ecclesiastes 10:19. 7. We were commanded to be fruitful. Without money, our ability to bear kingdom fruit is minimal. See Luke 13:6-9, John 15:1-7. 8. A Christian is a giver and abides in wealth. The blessing of the righteous exalts a city. See Proverbs 11:24-26, Luke 6:38. 9. Christians are in a covenant with God, and this opens heaven to us. We have unlimited access to heaven's resources because of our relationship with Jesus Christ. See Malachi 3:8-12. 10. Christians have the power to gain wealth. We have access to God's wisdom, favor, empowerment, and ability to create wealth. See Deuteronomy 8:18. 11. God takes pleasure in the prosperity of His people. This gives us heaven's backing to be prosperous for His glory. See Psalm 35:27. 8 reasons why every Christian should be a millionaire. 1. We must carry out the Great Commission. See Matthew 28:18-20. Our instruction, then, is to bring Christ to the people of the world, train them, and release them to change the world they come from. 2. We are commanded to clothe, feed, and house the needy and the poor. We need to be wealthy to do these things. See Matthew 25:31-46. 3. Our job is to manage the earth for God. See Jeremiah 49:2-3. 4. It is good stewardship. Our ability to faithfully manage wealth produces in us godly qualities. See Matthew 25:14-34. 5. It is shrewd to use the wealth of the world for eternal purposes. See Luke 16:8. 6. Christians should accumulate wealth to demonstrate how not to trust in riches, because trusting in riches will always disappoint. A man setting his mind and his heart on money will be equally disappointed whether he gets it or not. See Proverbs 11:28, Mark 10:23-25. 7. We cultivate our land and keep it. The creation of wealth enables us to build the great qualities of managing and protecting wealth. 8. As one of the righteous, a Christian leaves an inheritance to his children's children. See Proverbs 13:22. 9. It empowers us to fulfill this scriptural legacy and prepares the future generation for upward success. Pay God first and yourself second. For anyone to become wealthy, the first thing to learn is to pay yourself second. Each time we receive our salary, we first pay for our rent, car, fuel, gas and electricity, and other bills. This means we are actually paying other people first from our salary. Because of our money, others are keeping themselves above water. That is the logic behind commercial advertisement. It is aimed at your pocket, not at meeting your real needs. It is only when we pay our creditors or buy from them that they achieve their goal. Meanwhile, we part with our money only to keep on going back to work and expecting another paycheck. Then the same thing happens repeatedly. We receive our salary only to give the money to others, including the grocery store owner, the gas station owner, the hairdresser, or the property owner. This is not bad if we actually pay ourselves also, but unfortunately, the vicious cycle of paying others first never ends. This repetitive system is a deterrent to us. Therefore, it makes all the sense in the world for the person making the money to pay himself or herself first after paying God. Whenever we put aside an amount of money for our future or for our children and prosperity, we are actually paying ourselves. Any amount we retain from our salary is the only amount we actually get, and we give everything else away. Common sense says we must all learn the discipline of save a certain amount of money for ourselves before we begin our spending spree. We must consciously plan to put aside a certain percentage of our income for our future. Depending on one's commitment to saving, that amount could range from 10% to 50% of one's income. We like to spend, but saving is another thing entirely. The average savings rate in the United States is negative 0.5%, for compared to 20% in Europe, 0.5% in Japan, it is even higher, 0.6% in America. Wealth is evaluated not on what one has saved in the bank, but rather on what is in the yard, in the garage, or in the house. I have noticed that people who have not disciplined themselves to give tithes and offerings will also find it difficult to discipline themselves to pay themselves. I believe this is because they have not learned to first pay their essential obligation to God. So, pay God first and yourself second before you begin meeting your needs. 7 steps to saving. Here are 7 steps to keep in mind when laying aside money for your future and the future of your family. 1. Begin by paying your tithes and offerings as an automatic practice. 2. It is better if you can inform your bank to automatically transfer funds to your church account. 3. Instruct your bank to transfer automatically a designated amount from your paycheck to your Pay Myself Second bank account. 4. Try paying yourself no less than 10 to 30% of your normal income, and 80 to 90% of your extra income. 5. Whatever percentage you decide to put aside, not less than what is recommended above, put it aside consistently. 6. Putting money aside in savings must become so automatic that it functions as an automated system for you. 7. Put money saved in a fixed deposit with a guaranteed interest rate, such as a bonds deposit, or use a savings account. Savings through economizing your spending. Most people tend to find reasons why they cannot afford to save. Maybe you are one of them. They often complain of a small income or expensive bills and other responsibilities that will not permit them to pay themselves. The truth is, you should not try saving a large amount immediately, but instead discover that it is actually time that multiplies money. The problem is not in how much or how little you earn, but how much or how little you spend. If you receive $1 million monthly and spend as much, then you will never be truly wealthy. What determines wealth is not how much you receive, but rather how much you can save. To the extent you are able to reduce your expenses, you will be able to receive God's wealth. The paradox of money is that people tend to spend more than they earn. The Bible says that when wealth increases, those who spend it also increase, Ecclesiastes 5:11, but that should not be true of believers. That is why we must learn by practicing saving even while we are earning small amounts of money. If we master this now, we will be able to save more when we make more. This is a consumption-oriented society. Yet the Bible teaches us to prepare for the future with confidence, and to do that we need a realistic savings plan. Part of trusting God includes saving for the future. Non-essential expenditures. If we determined to save from the amount we would have spent on non-essential and unnecessary items, we would discover we could actually become wealthy. Some of us spend excess money on expensive boutiques, expensive restaurants, mobile phones, flashy clothes, first-class transportation, and so on. There is a long list of unessential expenditures we all waste money on daily. Think of your own list. We can all save $5 to $10 daily simply by refraining from non-compulsory daily expenditures. A daily cup of coffee could cost $3 or more, and a muffin to go with that coffee another $2. Candy or chewing gum or other cash register items might add another couple of dollars, and then soda could be another $2 to $3. If we spend money on unnecessary things every day, it could total up to as much as $150 per month, or $2,000 each year. What would happen if we put that same money into an account yielding a 10% annual return? In 40 years, we could earn close to $1 million. Savings can add up that dramatically. Let's examine some calculations below. Savings add up. If you begin saving $5 each day that you would normally spend on non-essentials, in 1 week you would save $35, and in 1 month, $150. In 1 year this would amount to around $1,825. If you include 10% compounded interest monthly, you could anticipate the following accumulated wealth. 2 years $3,967. 5 years $11,616. 10 years $30,727. 15 years $62,171. With 10% interest compounded monthly, and a monthly investment of $300, $10 a day for 30 days, after 1 year, the total would be $3,770. The totals continue to rise with each year. 2 years $7,934. 5 years $23,231. 10 years $61,453. 15 years $124,341. 30 years $678,146. 40 years $1,897,224. Does it seem impossible to invest $300 to $400 each month for your future? Then begin with $100 per month, an amount almost anyone can afford to set aside. Investing just $100 per month will reap huge benefits for you at retirement age, a time when you will no longer have the strength to labor. If you save $100 cash per month for 40 years, you have only saved $48,000 at retirement. However, if you invest $100 per month at 6% interest compounded monthly, just leaving the money there to compound, the earnings would be $199,150, 4 times more than you could save in cash. Remember, this return reflects using only a fixed deposit banking account. The money earned is apart from one's salary, business, stock investments, and so forth. The culture of savings and investments. 1. Keep some part of your earnings for your future. This is the pay yourself second principle. 2. 10 to 50% of your salary should go to work for you. Money in the purse is only gratifying to the soul, so put more of your money into your savings plan and less in your purse for immediate and easy spending. 3. Learn to live according to your purse, i.e., what you eventually have left after servicing your savings plan, and learn to live on less than your salary. 4. Don't be in a hurry to invest. Take great caution so that you do not lose your money. Remember, quick gain is deceptive. Many have said that if you want to make $1 million, you have to endure $1 million worth of pain. Gain usually takes time. The first principle of investment is securing the principles of righteousness and honesty. 5. Analyze your priorities. Discipline yourself to save and invest, and thereby later attain increasing wealth. Money cannot quench desires, only discus pline can tame desire. 6. Develop a budget and live by it. A budget defends your priorities from casual wishes, and it helps to differentiate between the two. 7. Save for uncertain times such as old age or unexpected circumstances. See 1 Timothy 5:8, 6:10. 8. Accumulate wealth first in small amounts, then larger amounts as you learn and become more capable. Your goals should be simple and definite. 9. Be focused and concentrate your efforts to acquire more information, new networks, strategies for better service, and cheaper and better products. 10. Beware of lending out money. You are not a bank, so do not bring others' burdens on yourself. Principles of wealth creation. Money is not necessarily what you should desire. The crucial thing is wealth. Keep in mind that money is not the same thing as wealth. Wealth pertains to all the things we want and need, things like food, clothes, cars, houses, and so on. Money is a recent invention, but wealth has been here for many thousands of years. You can have wealth without necessarily having money. For example, if you could have all the things wealth brings, you certainly would not need money. In many ways, it really does not matter how much money you have, especially if you are in a place where you cannot spend it. Then why does the subject of money always arise when talking about prosperity, wealth, and riches? Money is the way we move wealth, and money is necessary in a modern world where you have to buy most things from someone else. The one who understands the laws of money multiplication, retention, diligence is on the way toward wealth. Here are some principles of wealth creation. 1. Know your passion, know your love, and know what really gets you excited. 2. Study hard and obtain the best knowledge possibly in your area of calling. 3. Look for opportunities to build great relationships. 4. Make sure you are seeking to resolve problems and give good service. Think of whom your knowledge can benefit and render your services to them. Make sure you can offer something to the people you know. Focus on helping each person to resolve at least one problem. 5. Find out how much money and how many properties you have, and turn everything into investments or assets. 6. Make sure to keep some part of your earnings for the future. 7. Make sure that you invest 10 to 30% of all your earnings, 50% if possible. 8. Cut down on your expenses and invest the rest. 9. Make sure you have a mentor. Find competent people who can lead you in the process of wealth creation. 10. Reach for success by developing your passions, desires, and drive to make money. 11. Get to know the laws of money and follow them. Money comes to those who understand it. 12. Know that self-discipline is the greatest asset and the number one rule of wealth creation. To create lasting wealth, you must be able to master and discipline yourself so that you can adequately follow the laws of money and wealth creation. Now that you have read most of this second chapter, where I've endeavored to prove to you that becoming a millionaire is not a big deal, I would like to challenge you to stop here and repeat all the truths and principles you have been given above. Sit down and analyze your financial situation, and task yourself on the new things you have learned so far. For example, make up your mind on how much you want to put aside weekly or monthly from your income. Moreover, take another step further by investigating the best financial institutions that could likewise give you the best returns on your money. In short, try to put into immediate practice what you have learned so far before you are engulfed by other truths in this book. Remember, knowledge is nothing until it is established by action. Practical wisdom for aspiring millionaires. 1. Successful financial life begins with a successful save ing mentality. 2. Save to invest in your future. 3. One of the keys to saving is never to spend on what you can do without. 4. You either waste money, spend money, or invest money. 5. Fools waste money. 6. The mediocre spend money. 7. The wise invest money. 8. Investments become your future and assets. 9. Fight against pride in your life. 10. Always recognize the fact that we are only the managers and trustees of God's property. Kingdom Principles. From Chapter 2. 1. If money does not serve the kingdom, then it perverts, spoils, and destroys its owners. 2. The main problem the rich really have is that they often trust in their riches, making them their fortress instead of God. 3. You must master money to work for you while you are free from the world system, and to work for God to dominate the world with the principles of the kingdom of God. 4. Every Christian can be a millionaire, and, actually, it is easy to become one. 5. Your job is to manage the earth for God. 6. It is shrewd to use the wealth of the world for eternal purposes. 7. For anyone to ever become wealthy, the first thing to learn is to pay God first and yourself second. 8. The problem is not in how much or how little you earn, but how much or how little you spend. What determines wealth is not how much you receive, but rather how much you can save. 2. The extent you are able to reduce your expenses, you will be able to receive God's wealth. 9. Beware of lending out money. You are not a bank, so do not take others' burdens on yourself. 10. To create lasting wealth, you must be able to master and discipline yourself, so that you can adequately follow the laws of money and wealth creation. Chapter 3. Money does not make you rich. Do not love money. Love God, love your family, love friends and neighbors. Love people, but never love money. When you fall in love with money, it possesses you. By itself, money does not truly make you rich. It is neutral. That is why we need to acquire moral wealth before acquiring large amounts of money. Most people do the opposite. They put all their energy into amassing monetary wealth while ignoring the development of their character. The end result is that instead of them controlling their money, the money begins to control them. Money also enslaves. If we are not prepared to manage wealth and riches, they will eat us alive. This may be difficult for some to believe, but it is nonetheless true. Money will not make you happy. We use money to solve certain problems, which may produce a temporary sense of fulfillment or happiness, but it is never a true source of a joyful life. Christ is. If anyone thinks people are unhappy because of a lack of money, they are gravely mistaken. The reason many are unhappy is because either they have not understood the basic truths of life, or they simply refuse to live by them. For those convinced money is required for happiness, they need to know that mammon itself is responsible for this deceit. If the concept of money is to work for you and not against you, you must grasp these three crucial facts. Money does not make you rich, money enslaves, and money will not make you happy. A fourth and similar principle says that God entrusts money to the pure in heart. Now godliness with contentment is great gain. 1 Tim 6:6. In the world at large, even evil and unscrupulous people make money, but it possesses and controls them. Therefore, everyone who wishes to attain lasting financial prosperity has to work on developing a righteous and pure heart. Righteousness is true wealth, for it is the possession of God's character. Whoever possesses this character trait is content, no matter how much money they have or do not have. Righteous men and women fear the Lord and follow His commandments, and when they do, evil cannot touch them. The entire world's wealth could never corrupt a righteous person, because the righteous rule over wealth, and not the other way around. Money neither controls nor dominates them. They are free to use and channel it as God's Spirit directs them without the fear of loss. I want to tell you a sad story. There was a young woman who loved to shop. She could not pass by any department store or boutique in the mall without going in and buying something. Neither her first nor her second husband could satisfy her desire for shopping. Her third husband, however, was a millionaire who did not bother her about her expenses. Excited about her unending stream of resources, she went on a spending spree. She bought anything and everything she wanted. She even went shopping in London, Paris, and Zurich. Even though she bought everything she coveted, in the end she was still not satisfied. You see, it was not the money or the things it could buy for her. There was an empty space inside that only God could fill. In the search for a beautiful life, this woman became a drug addict. This story repeats itself every day across America. How many times have we seen relatively poor people become rich overnight after winning the lottery, only to lose it all in a few short years? Not only do many of these lottery winners lose all their money, but also some even end up having their properties confiscated and become debtors. Unable to overcome the despair of having to return to their former lives without money, some have even taken their lives. The verse says, godliness with contentment. By contentment, we mean a deep gratitude and appreciation to God for where we currently are and with what we currently have. The ability to be content is a quality that should be valued more than gold. Whoever has this trait is already a wealthy person. That rich young woman in the story above lacked contentment with the way things were. She could not be content, for in the end nothing satisfied her. If God sees that we are not content with what we have, He will definitely not entrust us with more. If we are not content with $100,000, then 50 million will not do the job either. Not even $1 billion will bring about satisfaction. That is the logic behind the love of money. The more you have, the more you want. We need to train ourselves to be righteous and become prosperous in our souls before seeking financial prosperity. Many people pride themselves as righteous when they have nothing. However, I have seen repeatedly that riches can bring out the true color of people. If we already have certain assets, then we should search our hearts and see how content we are with what we have. Inner discontentment and frustration are reasons enough to stop expecting further financial blessings, at least for now. Of course, one can go out into the world and start making money by worldly means, but in the end, this is not the solution. Wealth is not a miracle, it must be either earned or created. Money will destroy us if that is all we are seeking. Money should bless and not kill its possessor. Before God trusts us with money, we need to learn to see it as any other useful tool, like a simple piece of paper. Consider yourself successful if large sums of money do not excite you or cause you to become greedy. There are people who cannot control themselves when they see money in front of them. Try to give an unprepared man $1 million, and he will most likely destroy himself. Am I free or not? The mere fact of not having much money does not mean we have overcome greed. How do we identify our true feelings? Just consider the prospect of having millions of dollars, and imagine how you would feel. How do you feel when you think about into large sums of money overnight? Do you usually envy lottery winners or people who just suddenly got lucky with money? When you look at stacks of large bills, how does it make you feel? If you feel indifferent, then you have victory over money. If you failed the test, maybe you should think twice about asking God for big money. Thankfully, He loves us too much to entrust us with large amounts of it before we are ready. God does not want us to suffer, and therefore He does not bring money our way unless and until we are ready for it. If God is to trust us with wealth, we must get rid of all the passion and excitement we hide in our hearts for money. That is the source of true financial victory, not the money itself. As for me, I learned to live my life in a way that money does not rule over me. That is why in the time of need, money always comes to me. My thoughts are not about money, and I am constantly aware that I have authority over it. Some people will not even leave their house without money. This seems to be a bigger problem among men than women. Some men do not even tell their wives how much money they make because they do not want it taken away from them. In most families, the biggest conflicts are over money, because it has great meaning and a disproportionate place in their lives. Often, people lose control when they start making big money. Wives cannot recognize their husbands anymore because these husbands were not set free from the love of money before it became theirs. No millionaire I know carries money around. Why should they? Money for them is just an exercise in numbers. They are worth millions but often do not even carry a wallet. This is because these people are free from the power of money. On the other hand, people who have nothing often try to show off by carrying big, fat wallets around, counting their money in full public glare, because mammon has enslaved them. We have to learn to have the right attitude before God entrusts us with money. For this, we need to realize that money is just a means, not an end. It is a tool and resource in the same way a hammer, nail, or screwdriver is a tool required for a specific task. Just as we use a car as a means of transportation, so too money is used as a means of solving certain problems. If it means more to us than that, it will become our master. We are not supposed to treat money like a miracle that comes by itself. We earn it, but it is disruptive in the wrong hands. The fact that there are lotteries all over America with million-dollar jackpots does not negate the principle that money was meant to be earned. Many examples can be found of people who win large sums of money, only to return to their old, often penniless lifestyles within a short number of years. Some who were homeless returned to homelessness, just as homemakers became homemakers again. This is because they came into money when they were not ready for it, and they never learned that money must be under human control, not the other way around. It is a question of who the master is. Learn to master the laws and nature of money rather than expect it to come to you as a miracle. Wealth is not a miracle, it must be either earned or created. Many Christians, especially in developing countries, are sitting in churches expecting God to bless them with money, instead of learning the principles of wealth creation. That is a great pity. These Christians are no better than someone playing the lottery, because neither is attempting to create or earn their wealth, they just want to win it. We need to work to make money and be ready for it when it comes. Most people are capable of making a lot of money, but not everyone has the skills to retain it. It is not how much you make but rather how much you keep. This is a secret to financial success. Money that comes easily is like snow that falls on our heads and melts just as quickly. People who are expecting money through a miracle, and those who play the lottery, fall into this category. Be financially free. We read in Ecclesiastes 10:19, "A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes life merry, but money is the answer for everything." Neve. I learned one extremely important truth when I learned that people who are not free regarding money are not free at all. There are two kinds of financial freedom. One may decide either to live without money altogether, which seems almost impossible in our modern world, or to possess and control so much money they are free to spend any amount needed or desired. Most people will never experience this kind of freedom. 95% of the world, which means the vast majority of Earth's inhabitants, is utterly dependent on money. It controls and directs their lives. The lack of it limits their desires and visions. It dictates their lifestyle and controls their actions. It tells them what they can eat, what they can wear, where they live, and where they go. Largely, money or lack of it is the proprietor of their lives. It is tragic when a person does not have a place to live, when people go hungry, or when a church does not have a building to gather in for worship. It should not be that way. Money should not stop us, nor should it limit us or become an obstacle to us in any way. Money should not determine what we can and cannot afford. We must rule money and not allow it to rule us, because God predetermined we would have authority over all things, including money. I hope I've been able to convince you in this chapter that money is not what makes you rich or happy. Like I've said earlier, what is worth spending your lives on attaining is righteousness and contentment, which is true wealth. Get this right: if you will do more work on yourself, your character, and on your inner man, then you will get to a place where you are absolutely content and satisfied with God's blessings in your life. If you will pursue righteousness, contentment, and integrity, dedicating yourself to attaining these virtues, you will discover it will be easier for you to rule over money. More so, God finds it easier to trust you with wealth and money because your heart is right. Process of production. Even though God blesses, it works to our disadvantage without our involvement in the process of production. Like I had said earlier, we can become no better than gamblers and lottery players. We cannot just sit in church and pray to God to make us millionaires, rich and wealthy, without actually getting involved in the production of goods and services. It is no different from the ills of a welfare culture that creates a people with a welfare mentality. It ultimately destroys the fabric of a society by weakening the value system of hard work and responsibility. Genesis 2:15 tells us that God required even Adam to go through the process of production by telling him to till the ground and keep it. God is trying to tell us that the most important thing in wealth creation is not really the money involved, but the process by which it is created. God could have just commanded the earth to be cultivated by itself through a miracle, or command the angels to come and do the upkeep of the garden. That is even a better miracle. But God did not do that, because He designed man to do it. In that process of cultivating and tilling the ground, not only is production made possible, but man develops himself as well. As he works and goes through the process of production, he discovers more of his abilities, and his hidden potentials are released. He becomes a co-creator with God, and he enriches his knowledge by discovering more of nature and of the product he is trying to create. So, the process is important for both the man and the product. When preachers tell people to only give, and then expect a miracle, they have not helped the man. They have to go beyond that and encourage their people to learn the process of production of either goods or services. Going through processes helps both the man and the product. It is easier for a man that is content and righteous to be involved in the process of production because he is already satisfied and derives more joy in just being a blessing and a benefit to the earth and to others. He is no longer pursuing gain and greed, but when a man is only interested in gain and profit, most often, greed is behind it. We should be more interested in the blessing that the process brings rather than the profit we are going to get in the end. Money, therefore, is a byproduct of the process of production of goods and services. That is to say that money is a reward for goods and services. It is a compensation for going through the process of production. So when people play the lottery or pray for financial miracles without the process of production, it is more a manifestation of greed than blessing. That is why the Bible says that God blesses a diligent worker rather than an idle person who is just hoping for blessings to rain down from heaven on him. You need to learn to be happy and rich in virtues before physical and material wealth will follow. Practical wisdom for aspiring millionaires. 1. They understand the true nature of money as a force to be dominated, subdued, and directed for good. They know money is a good servant but a bad master, and they never allow it to rule or guide their lives. 2. Money is only the tool, it is never the goal. Or, we may say it is a means to an end and not the end in itself. 3. Stability, peace of mind, and joy in the family are far more important than money. 4. True millionaires live below their means. Everything they own they can easily afford. See the example of Paul in Philippians 4:10-19. 5. True millionaires are cash flow conscious. See Deuteronomy 28:8. 6. They let common sense, patience, and self-control dictate their wants and needs, rather than the attractiveness of something. They would rather live without things than buy them on credit. 7. They are resourceful problem solvers, using what they have not what their neighbors have to meet their needs. 8. They know how to maximize their time, talent, and resources. 9. True millionaires know how to explore the time, talent, and resources of others to the maximum. 10. They understand the value of a dollar and the decency of work. Kingdom Principles from Chapter 3. 1. Do not love money. Love God, love your family, and love friends and neighbors. 2. Money does not make you rich. 3. Use money to solve specific problems, not to make yourself happy. 4. The ability to be content is a quality that should be valued more than gold. 5. Money should not determine what you can and cannot afford. 6. Money is a good servant but a bad master. 7. Stability, peace of mind, and joy in the family are far more important than money. 8. The process of production is more beneficial than the profit we receive at the end. 9. Pursue righteousness, contentment, and integrity. Dedicate yourself to attaining these virtues and God will find it easier to trust you with wealth and money, because your heart is right. 10. True millionaires know how to explore the time, talent, and resources of others to the maximum. Chapter 4. Maximizing opportunities for financial prosperity. Here are some tips about using opportunities to the fullest in order to achieve success in your chosen sphere. The first tip is this: never stop learning. Continuous education is the minimum requirement for achieving success. There are endless resources to learn from before becoming proficient in any given area. In reality, each one of us has more intellect and skills than we will ever be able to use if we practice self-development and constant learning. Commit to continuous education. I want you to know you are smarter than you think. If you apply your mind, there is no obstacle you cannot overcome, no problem you cannot solve, and no goal you cannot achieve. Your brain is like your muscles in that it strengthens with practice. In sports, the more we train for a certain kind of sport, the better we become at it. It is the same thing with the brain. The more we learn, the more we build the capacity to learn. The volume of your studying determines your learning. Continuous education is the key to opportunity and success in the 21st century. It will have a substantial impact on personal gains. Make a decision today to become a student for life in order to grow and become better at what you do. In order to live a life of continuous education, follow the following 3 rules of practical advice. Rule 1. Spend from 30 to 60 minutes every day reading materials pertaining to your area of specialty or interest. By reading every day for an hour, you will be able to finish almost any book in a week. That equals 50 books per year, and 500 in 10 years. According to the Library of Congress, 59% of people polled had read fewer than 10 books in the previous year. 1 Fewer and fewer people are doing any reading at all, so think of the advantage you will have in your field. Reading for an hour each day will make you more knowledgeable, more competent, and better as a specialist. Rule 2. Use your time wisely, listening to teaching CDs while driving your car from place to place. On average, Americans spend 100 hours each year commuting to work. 2 That is as much as 12 to 25 40-hour workweeks, or 3 to 6 months of actual working time. It would be the equivalent of 1 or 2 semesters in a university. That is a lot of time, particularly wasted time. Why don't we make our cars mobile education centers? Many people became millionaires through headphone self-study from these kinds of CDs. That is why self-education is the biggest radical accomplishment in the sphere of education since the invention of the typing machine. Rule 3. Attend every possible seminar and course that can help you become more qualified in your trade or profession. The combination of reading, listening to teaching CDs, and attending professional workshops and seminars will lead to a life of continuous education that will have a great impact on your career. Ongoing education also comes in packages that are more for adult courses in high school, college, or the university. According to the Office of Continuing Education, in one Midwestern university alone, Purdue, there were more than 28,000 people active in non-credit continuing education courses for the 2003 to 2004 school year. 3 In credit programs, almost 2,000 were taking undergraduate courses that same year, and 2,500 were in graduate programs covering all the academic departments, as well as fields such as teacher education, technology, consumer and family sciences, and many other areas. Of the grand total, 66.7% were women. And these continuing education figures represent just one institution. This is an indication how important non-stop learning is. It bears repeating, non-stop education is the key to opportunity and success in the 21st century. Proverbs 23:5 says, "Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle." Neve. Choose a subject that will help you become more effective and qualified in your sphere. Make it your project and study it to the end. Attend courses and read books on this subject. Ask God for the spirit of understanding to be teachable. Analyzing reasons for financial failure. The reason for poverty in some people's lives is not because God likes them less or gave them less to work with. There are various tangible reasons for poverty in different countries of the world, depending on the region. Some of these are natural disasters, such as earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, and other natural disasters that do not allow people to rise up and be successful. Another tangible reason for poverty is dictatorship in a country, which is the situation in 43 developing countries, according to the U.S. Department of State. For the corruption of the government suppresses freedom of speech and religion, the right to fair trials, and does not allow wealth to get to ordinary people. Many dictators commit torture, murder their political rivals, and starve their own people. In democratic, free market nations, however, there is absolutely no reason for people to live in poverty. In these countries, the reasons for poverty are not always attributable to bad government. Even in cases where there is corruption in government, people still manage to make money. Neither is it attributable to the fact that one lives in a poor country, for even in the poorest countries there is wealth, just as in the richest countries there is poverty. No, I believe the main reason for poverty anywhere is that people fundamentally lack understanding of the laws and functions of money. As I pointed out earlier, money comes to those who know how it works. Understanding the laws that govern money. Understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. The difference between assets and liabilities is extremely important to grasp. The poor acquire liabilities while the rich acquire assets. An asset is a possession that brings income to your pocket, income that also appreciates. A liability is something you own that requires expenses on your part to maintain. A liability is also something that depreciates. The cars we drive and the houses we live in are liabilities because of expenses required for upkeep. The vast majority of people think that money is only for meet certain needs, such as eating, dressing, or driving a car. Yes, money plays such roles, but my message in this book is that if you only use money for meeting certain needs, you will never be rich. You will always lack real wealth and will become a slave who works for money only to spend and spend. Remember the parable of the talents where we learn that the first law of money is not to spend it. It is a rare thing to get money accidentally, such as winning a lottery or inheriting it or marrying into a rich family. That kind of money comes and goes, but it's not enduring wealth. Understanding that money, just like a seed, is meant to be multiplied. Money functions as a seed. What do we do with seeds? We can eat them, but that would be unwise. If we consume the seeds, next year will come, and we will not have anything to eat, because we have not sown a thing. Whoever does not sow does not reap is a universal law. Therefore, we must turn the money that comes to us into planted seeds. Even small amounts can multiply. In the next chapter we will look closely at the parable of the talents to learn more about the laws of money. That parable illustrates this fact: God will not swing into action on our behalf, and He will not give us something big if He does not see our faithfulness in small things. We are smart and can overcome any obstacle. Even so, Jesus said that some people in the world are smarter than we are, and no wonder. They have learned the main purpose of money. One of the lessons of the parable of the talents is that money cannot be stored, but rather needs to be put to work. We think sometimes, I am a believer. I pray to God, and I serve Him. God will bless me. This is not smart. Not if it means you are just going to sit around and wait for the blessing. No matter how much you pray, God will not give you much, because He knows you will consume everything anyway. God does not sit in heaven with a mon-ey printing machine, waiting for us to ask for riches, so He can drop a few bundles into our laps. God gives us power, authority. If you apply your mind, there is no obstacle you cannot overcome, no problem you cannot solve, and no goal you cannot achieve. Intellect, wisdom, and ideas, in other words, the abilities to make money ourselves, Deuteronomy 8:18. Some Christians have said to me, "Why do I need to work if God provides for me?" Of course, we bless each other in the body of Christ, but if we are continually asking God or the brethren for money all our lives, like the wicked servant, God will dismiss us from His presence into the outer darkness. Jesus said to the evil servant, "Go out of my sight. Your place is in the outer darkness." See Matthew 25:28-30. In Deuteronomy 8:18, we learn that God gives power to obtain wealth. It says, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Neve. Notice something: God does not give wealth, but rather He gives the power and ability to gain wealth. The first talent or the first money that comes to us is not for spending. Sow it into good soil, which is the beginning of producing fruit or profit. This is the difference between the rich and the poor. The rich make profit from their money and the poor consume their money quickly, afraid someone will take it from them. Understanding the difference between an investment mentality and a consumer mentality. A savings culture is the first step to wealth. The second is investment. As soon as you complete the first condition and start receiving returns on your money, the next question arises: how to keep it. Keeping money does not mean burying it somewhere. We have all heard about investors who put money into different projects. We also know people put money in banks in order to keep or save it. These are the smart things to do. Too many people do the opposite when they get some money in their hands. They count how far the money will go and then go out and spend the money on new clothes or new shoes, expensive cars, extravagant travel, and so on, until the money runs out. This is because most people lack the knowledge and understanding of the laws of money. That is why the poor get even poorer. If all of a sudden you came into $150,000, would you go out right away to buy an expensive car without thinking about how those expenses would only bring more expenses? Understanding the difference between financial discipline and instant gratification. It is no surprise that business people invest billions of dollars into advertisement. Why do they do that? Because millions upon millions of people watch commercials and then run to the stores to give their money away on the things they have seen advertised. Money goes from hand to hand, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That is why I have been stressing that the most important step to wealth is to retain money through savings. Everyone must start his or her financial journey with a philosophy of savings, because in time the small becomes big. True investment begins with a culture of saving. After savings, then we will begin to have something to invest and multiply. We must discipline ourselves to control the lust and desire to spend money. The man or woman who puts aside his or her desires and does not rush out to exhaust his or her money has power and control over it. $100 or $50 could turn into $1 million in 5 years through the law of money and really take care of children and grandchildren. Do not eat your first fruit. If you are in need, wait a little bit, and from your returns, you will be able to buy whatever you need. A 26-year-old man who used to be addicted to drugs came to our church and received Jesus into his heart. He was flat out delivered. This young man did not finish high school, did not go to college, and had absolutely no work experience. What he decided to do might sound crazy. With 10 cents, he bought 2 plastic bags, went on the commuter trains, sold the bags, and made some money. Then he went and bought more bags with the money he made from the previous sales call. In a year, he started little stalls in different stores, had 4 people working for him, and was making $250,000 a year selling plastic bags. This is the power of money in circulation. That man came to understand the very nature of money. If he did not have the right understanding, he probably would have sold a few hundred bags, and then used up the earnings without realizing it. He would still be walking from train to train with his plastic bags today. This is how many people unknowingly spend large amounts of money. No one can ever become rich by focusing only on spending instead of saving, no matter how little or how much. This is what the wise person knows, and so he disciplines himself and invests the money to get more returns, rather than spending it immediately. Let the money multiply itself many times over, and then enjoy it more. The person with power over money will never be poor. Those without that power tend to pursue a flamboyant lifestyle, thinking that their extravagant lifestyle and careless spending is what wealthy people do. That is not so. The rich are very accountable for their money. Most people look at the 5% of the population that owns 95% of the world's riches, and dream of being like them. This is a dangerous illusion. That kind of desire will only lead to becoming servants of the rich instead of their equals. The rich do not spend their first earnings or profits on flamboyant lifestyles. Only the poor and the proud do that in their attempts to appear rich and affluent. They drive cars they cannot afford and live in houses they cannot pay for. Moreover, when it comes to fashion, they wear all their wealth on their backs. They derive some sick satisfaction from the mere appearance of being wealthy, when in reality it is all an illusion. In their efforts to keep up the illusion, they must spend even more of what they own so little of. Hence, they progressively become the slaves of those who already have more than enough. Maximizing opportunities. As we can see from this chapter, a whole lot of people are poor, not because God is not good to them, and not because life does not give them a whole lot of opportunities, but, unfortunately, many never seem to see the opportunities they have. Successful people have learned to take advantage of opportunities. However, before you can take advantage of opportunities, You have to be able to see these opportunities first. Our ability to see opportunities is very crucial for wealth creation. For example, at the beginning of this chapter, I spoke about taking advantage of the time you spend in your car and other chances for study, thereby maximizing your time for productivity. People who do this will succeed in life. On the other hand, people who don't maximize their time live in lack and poverty, because they did not see their time as an opportunity that can be converted to wealth. This is very closely linked to the passage we see in Proverbs 13:23, where the Bible says that there is a lot of food in the field of the poor, yet the man is called poor. So why is he poor? Because he has refused to maximize the provision that God has given him. Also, because he has failed to manage and structure the resources in his hand. These and other reasons stated above are responsible for failure in life. Sacrifice before pleasure. If the man that is given $100 per month will invest the money in a profitable project on a regular basis, then as we witnessed in the previous chapter, even a $100 could make you a millionaire if the principles of money are followed. Everyone should take advantage of time and compound interest. Unfortunately, the poor people around us are actually becoming poorer, not just because of the system we live in, but also because of their mindsets of comparing themselves with the wealthy and the flamboyant lifestyle they see around them. When the poor do not know the true lifestyle of the wealthy, and the principles that the wealthy had observed before achieving this lifestyle, the poor will be deceived into pursuing only the end results without observing the preliminary laws of money that the wealthy had already observed. It is important for the poor and the rich to know that before they spend any amount of money on pleasure, they have actually made 10 times the equivalent of this money that would be spent on pleasure. If these laws are followed, we will succeed in reducing the amount of poverty that we have in our culture and society today. There is an inspiring story of one of the Armenian pastors in our church. Roughly 2 years ago, he, his wife, and 2 small children were suffering desperate circumstances. They were cooped up in a small, one-bedroom apartment, earning only $300 monthly. They could hardly afford to eat or use the public transport system. Due to this situation, he managed to keep money aside and bought about 300 cassettes of these financial lessons. He tried listening to them several times, and initially he didn't quite understand what I was saying because he actually couldn't read or write. He had never finished elementary school as a result of being expelled from 4 schools while growing up. Even though he was absolutely desperate to come out of poverty, he just couldn't because his mind was not used to learning. Nonetheless, with absolute determination, he took hold of those cassettes and started listening to them every day. It took him about a year to listen to all 300 tapes 4 to 7 times. All of a sudden his eyes of understanding opened, and he began to comprehend the principles of money that are stated in this book. As he started applying these principles over the subsequent year, he accumulated an asset worth of over $2 million US. He is now training 500 people to become millionaires too. Out of those 500 candidates, on the last count, he already had 255 people who were making between $10,000 and $50,000 per year. This is why I want to challenge every Christian reading this book not only to practice these principles in your own life, but also to go forth and teach them to others also, so that you could contribute to reducing the ache of poverty in our world. Rules of financial equilibrium. The next thing to know about money is how to balance expenses and income. No matter how much money we have, even if it is $1 billion, it will eventually run out. The main problem for many people is that they run out of money before their next paycheck. As I stated earlier, Proverbs 13:23 says, "A poor man's field may produce abundant food, but injustice sweeps it away." Neve. This scripture says there is plenty of food in the fields of the poor. If that is true, then why are some people poor? They are poor because their food is decreasing due to lack of order, management, and knowledge. They do not understand how money functions, and they do not know the laws of money. It is easy to learn these things, but the more information we have about money, the better we can control it. Another testimony we have is that of a young and beautiful girl. She came to our church as a student, 20 years old, and a sorry sight. I can distinctly remember her because the day she first stepped into the church, she was wearing tattered and torn clothes. She had come to Kiev from the countryside from another region of Ukraine. Even though her circumstances were horrible, she was surviving on less than $2 per day. She went ahead and bought all the cassettes of these financial teachings. She put her mind to studying them for 6 consecutive months, and then began applying these principles of financial equilibrium to maximize her $2. By this time she was almost 21, she began spending the next year implementing these principles and teachings so that by 22 she had already made her first $1 million still being a full-time student. Today she is heading up the Young Businessmen's Club in our church, whose aim is to help young people between the ages 14 and 25 to earn an income of $10,000 per month. At the moment, the club boasts over 300 members, which all goes to show that nothing is impossible when we follow the truths in this book. 8 Rules of Financial Equilibrium. 1. When we use or put our seeds to work, it multiplies. By disuse, it depreciates and loses value. For example, when we refuse to use our muscles, we lose our strength. The same applies to finance. Use it, that is, plant it or lose it. If we take piano lessons and then refuse to practice, we lose the obtained skills. The same is true with capital. 2. Storing money away without putting it to work will lose its original value over time. 3. Money will always leave the hand of those who don't put it to use, and come to the hands those who will multiply it. For example, the man with 1 talent which he didn't use lost it to the man with 10 talents. 4. The key to increase is always investment. A good steward keeps what he or she receives, then uses and increases it through investments. 5. Those who invest their talent are entrusted with more. 6. The reward for being trustworthy is more trust. 7. The steward who buries his some loses what he has, and he will see it given to another. 8. Life is based on laws, and understanding the laws of money will bring greatness. Practical wisdom for aspiring millionaires. 1. The foundation of life is laws and principles, not superstitions and mystery. 2. Successful people know that life is time and time is money. They do not waste it but maximize it. 3. Great people reign by what they know, hence, they are always seeking knowledge. 4. Successful people love work. 5. Curiosity is the lifetime hobby of successful people, and opportunities do not pass them by. 6. Great people are reliable, stable, and truthful. 7. Quality and excellence are the watchwords for people who achieve success, and they desire to be the best in every area of their lives. 8. Strong achievers are always confident about their abilities. 9. People at the top are ready to go the extra mile and make the necessary sacrifice to reach their goals. 10. The successful man or woman considers details, facts, and fragments. Kingdom Principles. From Chapter 4. 1. In reality, you have more intellect and skills than you will ever be able to use if you practice self-development and constant learning. 2. Self-education is the biggest radical accomplishment in the area of education since the invention of the typing machine. 3. The key to saving is to never spend money on what you can do without. 4. You may waste money, spend money, or invest money. 5. An asset is a possession that brings income to your pocket, income that also appreciates. A liability is something you own that requires expenses on your part to maintain. A liability is also something that depreciates. 6. God does not give wealth, He gives the power and ability to gain wealth. 7. True investment begins with a culture of saving. 8. The sin of indolence is doing nothing, the sin of insolence is passing the blame to others. 9. Life is based on laws, and understanding the laws of money will bring greatness. 10. Successful people are successful because they have learned to take advantage of opportunities. Chapter 5. Financial Freedom. and the basic laws of money. As God's children, our goal should always be to be financially free and to depend on our Maker alone. Accordingly, nothing should control our lives but Him. To live like this, however, requires that we first conquer the love of money and rise above its controlling power. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes life merry, but money is the answer for everything. Ecclesiastes 10:19, Neve. Yes, feasts are for fun, but money is required for them. No money, no party. The simple and indisputable fact is that we need money. We need it to make a feast for God, for our families, and for our generation. The Lord tells us in Psalm 23 that He will prepare a table for us in full sight of our enemies. Notice that even God wants to prepare a table for us. He needs something to work with from our end, which is why we must apply ourselves to work. Money is responsible for fun. As I said earlier, there are two ways to be financially free: either we have no financial responsibilities, making us independent of the influence of money, or we have a surplus supply of money, making us free from the worry of responsibilities. The first scenario would only apply to a small segment of society, such as children or homeless people. Therefore, the only reasonable way to be finally free would be to have money in abundance. The fact is, we derive satisfaction from things other than parties, nice clothes, comfortable shoes, good cars, and so on. These things are as much a source of satisfaction as they are the source of monetary responsibilities. Still, if you were to try live without them for a year, I seriously doubt whether you would have much fun. Without funds, there is nothing to eat, no gas for our cars, and no clothes to wear. What did Solomon mean when he said, "Money is the answer for everything"? This means it brings answers or solutions to all questions of life. Everywhere I go, I hear people complain about the lack of money. There is not enough money in Germany, England, Africa, the United States, or Ukraine. Remember, 95% of the money in the world is concentrated in the hands of only 5% of the world's population. The other 95%, almost 6 billion, struggle to grab a part of the remaining 5%er. Those in possession of the money are the ones who know the principles of wealth creation. Here we have two major contrasts in financial profiles. As 95% of the world's people have a shortage of money, and the other 5% have abundance. The first group consists of people trying to solve the problem of not having enough money. They work from morning until night to make money. Therefore, they end up being slaves to it. The latter group of 5% has their needs and the needs of their children covered. Thus, their only challenges are how to steward their money, so that it keeps on turning over interest for them daily, and how to avoid paying taxes. This is another perk the wealthy 5% enjoy: they do not pay taxes. What a contrast! Those who can least afford it shoulder the nation's burden of paying taxes, while those who could easily afford it get off scot-free. It is little wonder the rich get richer while the poor are forever getting poorer. The love of money. It is not money itself but rather the love of money that is the root of all evil. When people love money, they are not free from it. People whose thirst for money drives them to that extreme commit a vast majority of the crimes committed in society. As strange as this is, it is not the people with credible wealth, but people who do not have money who are usually the ones most affected by the spirit of mammon. As I mentioned earlier, having an excess of wealth creates its own problems, and it has ruined many people. However, a lack of money and the desire to have it is responsible for most crimes and violence. Just a cursory glance at history will reveal the extent to which this is true in America. Crime flourished during the Great Depression at an alarming rate, even by today's standards. From the street gangs to the more sophisticated crime rings, there were myriads of activities among them, all aimed at making money. At the writing of this book, because of the recession, bank robberies have increased in America over the past year. 1 However, the love of money is seen not only in the multiplicity of crimes being committed by the poor, but also in legal activities at the institutional level. Since Roe v. Wade, circa 1973, over 50 million babies have been legally aborted in America. Some see no wrong in this, while others consider it morally reprehensible. Whichever end of the spectrum you stand on, abortion is a multi-billion-dollar federally funded business that continues to flourish under government protection. Anti-abortionists in America have fought long and hard to have the laws overturned for the protection of the unborn, but to no avail. Why the killing of the innocent unborn is allowed to continue can only be explained by the love of money. The same can be said of the pornography industry, which enjoys protection under the First Amendment. It does not take a genius to see the negative impact of these things upon society. If time permitted, we could talk about the greed of Wall Street speculators and the effect they have on the price of oil and, consequently, the global economy. The love of money affects people from every segment of society. It impacts the rich, the poor, and even our institutions. You are either the master over money, or you are its slave. Either you make money serve you, or you will end up serving it. Most people believe they are free from the love of money. You can test yourself by asking, "What am I working for?" If it turns out you are working for money alone, then you might be its slave. Christians should not work just for money. Instead, every Christian should go to work with one goal and one purpose in mind: to bring the kingdom of God into the sphere where he or she works. We are his ambassadors in the marketplace. If we are working at a job only because we must survive, then the potential exists for money to control our actions and rule over us. Survival makes us resort to all manner of desperate acts. Kingdom dwellers must never be motivated by survival, but by purpose. Jesus went to the cross because he was not concerned about his longevity. He had a single purpose in mind and would not be deterred by threats or criticism. For Jesus, survival was never an issue. He lived and died for the will of the Father. That was his purpose. Therefore, the first purpose of employment should be to bring God's kingdom to rule in our workplace. God gives us plans for making his name known and getting his will done. Paychecks and promotions are just God's way of rewarding our faithfulness in seeking his kingdom first. For me, work is service to God, a way of establishing the kingdom of heaven on earth. Of course, I want to have a decent salary, but a decent salary is not my primary goal. Instead, I want to be an example to my coworkers that God will provide everything necessary in life. If you are motivated by something different than that, you need to change. All work should be service to God. Money is only a byproduct of such services. Who is your God? The tragedy of the 21st century is that people especially in the West serve money instead of making money serve them. It is sad to see how so many have become slaves to money. It is true the Lord wants us to prosper, but there is a purpose for prosperity. It is ultimately for the prosperity of God's kingdom in this world. While acquiring riches, avoid stepping away from the boundaries of that goal. If you devote yourself to this purpose, uprooting all selfish ambitions and egoism from the heart through repentance, then the Lord, who looks at the heart, will sanctify you and make you a channel for his glory. When you devote yourself to the promotion of God's kingdom, you can prepare for blessings. God does not give money so much as he entrusts it to those who are pure in heart. He can only trust those who are dedicated to working tirelessly to establish his rule. These are the principles that move us toward wealth before we actually receive financial blessings. They must be deeply entrenched in our hearts. Would you like God to entrust you with millions? If your answer is yes, what will you do if someone actually gives you $5 million? During one of the numerous seminars I conduct in our church, I ask these two questions, and I want to share some of the responses I received from people who thought they were ready to be millionaires. 1. I would fast, pray, and ask God what he would want me to do with the money. Yet this is no answer at all, because if we do not already know what we need money for, then we really do not need it. Money comes only in response to vision, because when there is vision, money moves in its direction. Vision leads to provision. 2. I have a few ideas. I would buy a piece of property and build a rehab center. I would buy buildings for other ministries and help them financially. This sounds worthwhile and spiritual, but spend money that way only leads to spending all the money reserved, and soon that person is penniless again. Before spending money on charities, multiply it first. 3. I would invest the money in arts and media for the Word of God to be preached on television and in theaters. This answer is similar to the previous one in that this mindset only devours the finances, instead of generating a source by which it would constantly generate more and more funds for future use. 4. I would build houses for homeless people. I would also give money to students who can't pay for their education. A wrong understanding of money makes people assume that their first duty to money is to spend it. On the contrary, the first law of money says do not spend it, invest it instead. 5. I would invest the money and make a profit. Then, I would buy a building for the church. This answer is much better. The responses I received in my own congregation show that only 1 out of 5 Christians understand what to do with money. Wise people know they only spend the proceeds from one's capital, but never the basic capital. These answers point to the fact that most of us are not prepared enough for God to entrust us with money. He also knows how each one of us would really use the money. One thing is certain: God will never entrust wealth to someone not ready to handle it. He is our Creator, and He knows us better than anyone else does. He also knows whether we would have enough wisdom to make the right choices. For most of us, a single day for riches implies rich